Yeah. Yeah. Guess who came back with a large fucking fist to eat the Brooklyn blast furnace? I brought your ugly bitch with me. Your shit is sus. Ain't nobody trying to hear you talk. When Jimmy's on the mic, they take your whack shit and turn it off. It's real life, not them stories that you punks say. He made it out alive, and he's relatively unscathed. So subscribe to the podcast and share the post and tell your stupid friends to do the same. You heard it here from Coast.
And we're up and we're back. Right before I just pressed record, I was just saying to my guest here, the one and only Parris Mayhew, that I feel like I'm a little rusty because I haven't done this in almost 2 years. So originally when I killed the podcast, and like that final episode was all geared towards like literally like just putting it to bed like forever. Like, and in that moment I was serious about just ending it. But then one thing leads to another, and next thing you know, we're back over here now. You know, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man?
I'm doing better today. I'm right at the tail end of COVID for the second time.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I don't know, man. The whole COVID thing is crazy. I think it's crazy that people are still getting it. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah, as soon as I realized I had it, I didn't even know what to do. I accepted the fact that I was supposed to go to work on Law and Order the next day, and I had to call in and let them know. And I was almost half expecting them to tell me to come in.
Really?
Because I don't even know what the protocols are these days. But I guess on a TV show, it's still the same thing. They told me not to come in.
Yeah. I don't know what it is either, because when I had it, we were just talking before we started, and like I can't complain about like my employers, and because they didn't dock any sick days, I still got paid, but they were like, you have COVID, you stay home for 10 days. I got paid and all that stuff, but now it's just like, all right, maybe you just take the day off and they'll probably dock you a sick day, then you come back to work. They're almost treating it like kind of like a cold now, for the most part. You know?
I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. We can get into that whole thing, but we're not going to do that about the whole COVID conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of figured it would wind up being like a normal thing happening constantly, and it'll just never go away. It'll just be like a cold. We'll see. So, you know what? I was like digging around a little bit, and instead of going right to you're the co-founder of the Cro-Mags and everything that everybody already knows. What I wanted to talk to you about, first is something that I found out today that I had no idea about, which I think is super fucking cool, is your dad. Okay? First, Aubrey Mayhew, he was a Korean War veteran, which much respect. And I am a huge Kennedy guy when it comes to like the whole deal. I was there 2 years ago for the first time, and I had no idea, obviously, I said that several times already, that he was a quote unquote Kennedy collector.
Yeah, he was an inadvertent Kennedy collector because he just happened to be in Texas when Kennedy was assassinated.
Right.
He came out of his hotel, and just women were like down on their knees in the street crying. And he just saw this thing going on around him, and he couldn't believe the impact it had. And when he found out that a sitting president had been assassinated in his lifetime, and the cultural impact that had, he could see right before his eyes. He was in the entertainment business, and he was like, recognized that this was an historical day, and he was trying to figure out a way to really capture the weight, the power of the phenomenon that was happening. So, he went back to his hotel and he turned on the news, and just the news on every channel. It wasn't even like the news like we have now. They just preempted all the channels or whatever it was, and they just started, broadcasting live news as it was going on. Oswald getting caught at the movie theater and Kennedy passing away and all that kind of stuff as it was going on. So my father went down to a local recording studio and he got some tape recorders, and he put them in front of the television, and he just started recording the news.
Wow.
And he recorded it for about 24 hours.
Huh.
And then he worked for a company in New York called Pickwick Records, and they were basically a repackager. They would take old masters, and that's why he was down in Texas. He was down there trying to buy some George Jones masters that they would repackage on Pickwick and then put out. And so after he recorded for 24 hours, he got in his car and he drove back to New York. And he went into the office of his bosses and said, "Listen, this thing is happening. It's happening around us as we're the seated president, historical. This is like the most historic thing that'll happen in our lifetimes, and we have to figure out a way to capture that kind of historical thing in a bottle somehow."
Sure.
And he pitched the idea of pressing these 24 hours news things, like the best parts of them, on a record. And which it's kind of hard to imagine that kind of thing now because we have such instant access to everything. But back then, you didn't. And so he convinced them to press vinyl albums of these recordings of the news.
That's awesome, like forward thinking on his part. He was like, that's awesome to think of that in that time frame. Like that's cool, man.
And the record ended up selling 4 million copies.
Jesus.
Like right now, people think, the Beatles and all that stuff, all these bands, they sell these millions of records. But back then, music artists didn't sell millions of records.
Right.
There were millions selling record people back then.
Right.
A gold record back then was 10,000 records.
Crazy.
I mean, so when you hear about all the gold records the Beatles had and all that kind of stuff, that was 10,000
records. Yeah.
Not 100,000 records like it is now, or 1 million records for a platinum record.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was able to create this income for this label, they basically said to him, what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I want to find a new artist. I want to sign new artists. After the war, there was like there wasn't such a thing as country music. They called it back porch music.
Okay.
All these soldiers coming back from the war, like with their guitars and songs that they wrote out there and sitting on porches and singing, but they didn't actually call it country music. So my dad wanted to go out and find an artist, and he convinced them to let him do it. And the first artist he signed was Johnny Paycheck.
That's fucking awesome.
Donnie Young, but my dad. But anyway, going back to the Kennedy thing, that was his first foray into the Kennedy thing, and just from that point on, he just kind of was interested in anything. He just started buying anything that was associated with John F. Kennedy for a period, primarily gold coins.
Okay.
And he started collecting gold coins, and he down on Music Row in Nashville, where like all the record companies were in houses. They weren't like in high-rise buildings.
Right.
They were like literally somebody would take over a house and they put a record label, and you just walk up onto the porch and knock on the door and go in and sit down and do your deals. And
like Sun Records, it's like Sun Records is like the size of my apartment.
Yeah, and my dad had one of those houses, and at some point he was just like, he just bought another one of the houses and opened up a museum. It was called the John F. Kennedy Memorial Museum, and there was hundreds of gold coins and just memorabilia that he had collected. And he started enlisting his secretary and other people that worked for him to contact people all over the country, and things got to the point where his office was just like boxes coming in on a daily basis, Kennedy items all over the world, until he built what was called the biggest Kennedy collection in the world. But I mean, the thing is about this, I could sit here and talk about this for the next 5 hours.
I'm sure you can, but I figured I would
sure,
throw you a
I'm sure
curveball.
Aggros fans would rather hear more about music, but
Well, true, but listen, we're not just gonna focus. Well, of course, we'll talk about the Aggros, of course, but I figured I would throw you a curveball and throw something a little bit different at you than, the obvious.
yeah, my father was an extraordinary person. I was lucky to have him as a father.
Do you have any of that memorabilia or anything like that?
As my father always says, deny everything.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Very cool. So let's jump right into it then.
Okay.
Aggros. Very cool, very different, and that's why it's so dope. Because I think it just takes a lot of balls just to throw out an instrumental hardcore record. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you had your couple little instrumental songs on whatever records, you know what I mean, here and there from different bands, but to throw out nothing but instrumental shit, it takes balls and a little bit of backbone, bro. But I think you nailed it because it's so different and kind of left to center that it's dope.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have put it out if I didn't feel like it was complete and it felt complete. But I also accumulated the songs one at a time and began approaching each one. Usually when you write a song, you as a musician who's not a singer, I always wrote them as basically beds for lyrics. And then I did try to work with a couple of singers, but I just wasn't getting anything. The problem with someone standing in front of your music and singing is what they say, think, and their ideas become, they saturate what you've done creatively, and it just becomes almost more about what they're saying. And I rarely find anybody that I feel should have that power over my creative output. And so I just began writing the songs as densely as I could. And when I finished Chaos Magic and I decided to put that one out, it wasn't even with the idea that it would all be that way. I just put out the first thing that felt complete, and then approached every song subsequently in the same way. And I didn't find it difficult at all to, I've said to other people, is I think a lot of people, when they listen to it, instead of thinking to themselves about what is missing, they find themselves listening and acknowledging the stuff that is filling the space where there would have been vocals. So it's not like there's just an empty space. It's not like I decided to put out a record that has left something out.
Right.
I filled in the blanks with something else, which is, again, it's not a new concept. I'm a big fan of, 70s instrumental jazz, the Dixie Dregs and Brand X and Mahavishnu Orchestra and Scott Henderson and all these people that have made this kind of music, and that's all their music is like that. So to me, it doesn't feel so odd. I mean, and on modern bands like Polyphia, I love Polyphia, and I think their biggest mistake in recent times was adding vocals. But obviously, instrumental music is not some great breakthrough. It's just not something that is normal in our realm.
Exactly. Obviously, yeah. I mean, that's what it's like. Wow, Parris is putting out instrumental stuff, releasing it as is, and like I said, I think a lot of people would think that was, I don't know, odd or whatever. At first, I was like, well, I didn't even think that. I was like, well, this could be interesting. And I threw it on. I'm like, this is dope. Like, I didn't know what to expect, honestly. You know what I mean? But like you just said, amongst our tribe, I guess you can say, it doesn't happen. So I think it's,
I've always listened to all kinds of music. I'm a big fan of Yes.
Okay.
And it's not like I even have to revisit those albums to see how it happened, but because I listen to records all the time. I listen to Tales from Topographic Oceans and Close to the Edge and Relayer all the time. I never stop listening to them. They're always on in my playlist. But when I listen to them, I see it. I mean, to me, it's so obvious how I was able to construct the songs I did. I basically just did what I always did in the Cro-Mags.
Gotcha.
songs that I've written are the skeletons are basically the same kind of thing, but I just dressed it up with piano and and I let the bass take more of a role, like Chris Squire and Yes did, where it like will run ahead of the music. It'll run ahead of the guitar and take over melodically. Even if only for a movement, and then let the piano take over for a little while, and then let a guitar solo take over, or even the rhythms. Like I was able to I managed to be able to create a conversation between the rhythms of the guitars and the bass and the drums, and it's just from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, I don't feel like there's ever a point where you're like waiting for something to happen, because it just keeps happening in a different way, whether it be piano or bass or guitar. And then when basically the album was finished, and I realized that there were no guitar solos on the record, and not that that's a big deal. And so suddenly I started writing some solos, and and I write solos differently than I think most lead guitar players do, because there's a lot of people who, they do it for flash and attention, and it's more like an excitement element, where people they flex their technique and stuff like that. I'm more of a soloist, like someone like Steve Howe from Yes, where it's the melody is the primary thing, or David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. So I started constructing some of those, and while I was doing it, I just kept thinking about Chuck Lenahan. He's an old friend of mine, and I thought to myself, wow, I could just call him and ask him if he'd be interested. And then I just kind of I didn't even do it with a phone call. I just sent him an email, like with the track, Chaos Magic, which had already been out without a solo. So to me it was kind of complete and finished.
Right.
But I just figured if I was going to have him try something, it would be on something that I already felt was complete. And then I sent it to Chuck, and it just turned out that Chuck was this extraordinary resource that I just kind of had in my pocket, that I didn't even think about or realize, because I hadn't really spoken to him that much in at least 15 years.
Wow.
And now we're a part of each other's lives, musical lives again, and it's really amazing.
That's awesome. You have a show coming up. Well, it's coming up at St. Vitus now. Is it St. Vitus that I saw it on your page?
Oh no, that already happened.
No, but there was something else. Unless the algorithm is fucked up, because that usually happens too.
Oh no, it just probably somebody reposted the poster from that show.
Some shit like that. So you had mentioned, obviously, when you construct your songs like you did way back in the Cro-Mags. Was there any bands before the Cro-Mags that you were in? Even if it's like little stupid garage bands that'll just fucking around or anything like that?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I had a band called Reported Missing, and it was myself and a kid from my school who played guitar, and a kid from my school who played drums, and this kid in my neighborhood named Paul Dordow, who was just kind of like, he was only like a year older than us, but he was like way older than us, because he had his own apartment and he was 15.
Wow, yeah, it's an old kid with an apartment.
I mean, he had his own apartment, and he was like
crazy.
He was definitely crazy. He was insanely. We would go out to he would drop. He would fight at the drop of a hat. I don't know how many times we were in the middle of the street fighting with like stray bricks and broomsticks in the street, fighting this local gang in our neighborhood called the 83rd Street Gang. But Paul, Paul was just like I said, he just seemed older than me, and he would sit in his apartment with sunglasses on, taking pills, and we would go out to clubs together. The first time I ever went into a bar was with Paul. It was at Liss's Sly Fox, right next to Veselka on the Lower East Side, little Polish bar. Remember he telling me when I was like 14 years old, oh, let's go to this place. They'll serve us alcohol. And we had this band Reported Missing, which was kind of very much a Rush band.
Okay.
But Paul had this job listening to records. Like he would get boxes of records, and he had like a clipboard with a thing, and he was supposed to write the name of the record and like what he thought of the record on it.
That was his
And
job?
because his father was an accountant or something at Polygram Records.
Okay.
And so one day we got this Motorhead record in there, and that completely changed both of us. And Reported Missing slowly started to change because I started writing all these songs where I was trying to be more like Motorhead as opposed to being like Yes or something.
Nice.
And the other guys in the band didn't like that at all. They
Really?
didn't like. One day I came in with World Peace and I just started playing it because I was a bass player.
Yeah.
And I'm playing these songs, and they were like, we just don't get it. But Paul got it. And Paul
Okay.
actually was the one who said, when I first played World Peace, he said, this song is going to be called World Peace Can't Be Done.
Okay.
So I just called, and he was the singer, and he came up with that title. But almost immediately, it became clear that the other guys didn't want to be a part of this. So
Yeah.
the band broke up, and then Paul went off, and kind of like disappeared. I didn't see him for a little while, and one day I had made flyers, musicians wanted, bass player looking for bands type thing.
Sure.
And so I go down to like the one or two places I could think of to put up flyers, which would be Bleecker Bob's.
Yeah.
I went down to Bleecker Bob's and I put up a flyer. And then I went down to 171 Avenue A,
Yeah.
where the Bad Brains recorded and where Rat Cage Records was. And I was standing in front with like, scotch taping this flyer. And I hear my friend Paul's voice say, Parris. And I turn around and there is Paul standing with, of all people, Harley Flanagan.
Oh shit.
And they're both like looking at my flyer. And Paul's like, oh, you're starting a new band? I was like, yeah. And Harley said something like, oh, Paul, why don't you play with him? You play guitar. And it was interesting because I didn't really think of Paul as a guitar player. I thought of him as a singer. And Paul was like, oh no, I can't play with Parris. He plays like Rush. I'm not good enough.
Right.
But that little interaction with, because clearly, like Paul was older than Harley. You could see it was kind of like this thing. Harley was kind of following Paul around.
Gotcha.
The fact that Paul thought that I was, a player of relevance, that initiated the push for me and him to play together. And initially, when we started the band,
Yeah.
it was called the Bald Eagles. It was me, Paul, and Harley.
I love all this little shit that like no one ever talks about or no one knows I love this shit. Go on.
We were all sitting around. It's just like I always say, when you have like a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old sitting around talking about starting a band, and the things that they talk about with like so serious.
Yeah.
So we were sitting around and we were just riffing around, and in that first day, because I'd already gone over and met Harley's aunt Denise from the Stimulators, who had a bass amp and stuff, and I played for them, and I've told that story many times. But after that whole thing went on and realized like, okay, this could be a cool band. Me, Paul, and Harley just started jamming a little bit. We came up with this other song called Bald is Beautiful, if you can believe that.
Okay. I can believe it.
Crazy fast song I had, which the funny thing was it didn't become a Cro-Mags song in the beginning, but years later it turned into the song Down But Not Out, which was on Best Wishes. Because it was just, because it was the way I was playing was like real hardcore. Ding 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 ding. And by the time we were doing Best Wishes and we were all metaled out, it was like same exact chords. But yeah, that song turned into that. So yeah, I had this, the thing about Reported Missing was, we were all little kids. Yeah. And we rehearsed in one of those studios on 48th Street where everybody rehearsed. And the guy who owned the studio wanted to manage us. And he was like, oh my God, these little kids are so good. And he was like, I'll give you free studio time if you sign with me as a manager and all that kind of stuff. And we were just kind of like, I don't know about that.
It's a little weird.
we didn't play any gigs or anything. And just as it would have become, something more defined of what I would be doing in the future, the other guys just lost interest. And that's when I went off to start my new band.
Right.
But in between that, I tried to do other things. I auditioned had got into the band The Mad, playing bass.
Yeah.
But George, Screaming Mad George wouldn't let me write songs, so I quit. I was like, I can't be in a band where I can't write songs. I mean, that's writing songs is the only reason why I would ever be in a band. It's the only reason I went out to look for a band.
Right.
You know, after Reported Missing broke up, because I thought that's the way it had to be. I thought, you know, you met four other guys or three other guys, and you formed a band, and that's how it was. You know, it's like what you saw in the magazines,
right.
Sex Pistols, the Bad Brains, Aerosmith, any band you ever heard of. Like, you know, you'll always think of it in a band context.
Sure.
So that was the natural thing I did. But really, the end goal was just for me to take, you know, when I sit by myself and write a song, to find somebody else to play it with. And this most recent time around, I just found myself, with the aid of technology and the aid of experience, of not wanting to deal with that kind of thing, because you just end up being, especially someone like me who's a songwriter, you end up carrying more of the load than anybody else.
Sure.
And if you find yourself like I did all these years later, watching two bands out there in the world playing your songs, the songs that I sat by myself with my guitar and wrote in my mom's kitchen, and there are two bands out there in the world performing those songs and earning a living and getting the accolades for, is something that I will never ever tolerate again.
Right.
So I found myself with this basically surplus of songs, because that's just what I do. You know, I just sit down and write songs for the sheer joy of it, the pleasure of it, you know.
Yeah.
And but I also have the hindsight from experience to know what I can do with them. So I began to record them, and I slowly accumulated them until there was an album's worth of it, and then I did it without a band.
Awesome.
And you know, like on this album, there's 5 different drummers.
Okay.
And I play all the bass. And you know, because I was a bass player first, it was my first instrument, even though I'm more known as a guitarist.
Sure.
And I played all the guitars, short of the spectacular, stunning guitar solos by Chuck Lenahan.
Mm-hmm.
And my piano teacher, Dirk, plays piano.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's kind of cool. Bring the teacher in.
Well, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, I take piano lessons right here.
There you go.
And me and Dirk were here, and he was, you know, when initially I have Rhodes downstairs. I'm on the second floor of my house in my office, but I had a Rhodes in storage for years and years and years, and me and my wife finally got this house. It's the first time I really had a place to set it up.
Yeah.
So I set it up in the living room, and about a week later, I was at work, and I got a text from her. My phone, it said, "You have a piano lesson at 3:00 on Saturday. You can't have a Rhodes in the living room and not know how to play it." That's what it said.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. So that Saturday, when on my day off, I was sitting at home, and this guy Dirk Peters shows up, a German, of course. My wife is German, okay. So she found me a nice German man, classically trained jazz vibraphonist and pianist. Shows up here, and for about a year, he was teaching me Beatles songs and David Bowie songs and stuff like that, teaching me the rudiments of physical. I'm sorry, I still have a little bit of my
it's okay
from the COVID. Teaching me the rudiments of playing the piano and music theory and stuff, which I grew extremely bored of. And at some point he came in, and I said, "Listen, you know, the way I learned to play guitar was I just wrote my own songs and played them over and over and over and over until I got really good at playing my own songs.
Yeah.
So I would like to try to approach the piano the same way. And like I can play you some stuff on my acoustic guitar, and then you can explain to me what I did musically, compositionally, and we can go over like what key it's in, and you can explore learning not only how to play it, but like what all the avenues of composition there are, which are really things I didn't really think of. I did all my writing in the past from experience, but like if you know what key you're in, and you know what the options are, there's like you could sit down and play something and go, oh, well, I can do this, or I can do this, and I can do this. And it's all very mapped out on the piano. It's very clear. Whereas on the guitar, I always found myself playing something over and over and over again until I found by chance some other part that I could play. I'm gonna have to get a little sip of water. Stand by.
Go right ahead, man. This is guerrilla podcasting, Parris.
Oh yeah, I was closer to the
dude.
So
it's fine.
So yeah, he began showing me these options, and the more I heard, like every time he came in, I would play him a different like acoustic song I had, because I hadn't been in a band for many years, just playing in the film business. So I just been writing and stuff for the pleasure of it, and I just had like the surplus of music, so I would just play something different for him every time he came in, and we would explore how it was on the piano. Almost immediately, when I heard how it was, at first I was just doing acoustic guitar stuff, but then I started doing like heavier stuff. The first heavy thing that I played for him was City Kids. And we were going over the chords, and we were just playing this crazy piano stuff. And after the day, I said, what would I have to do to get you to play on a recording? He said, ask me.
There you go.
And so so the next Saturday, I brought him into the studio, and we just sat down and explored all the ideas that we had in the piano lesson. And I took notes the whole time we were in the piano lesson too. And then I recorded him playing piano from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, like over and over again. Like I would have play from beginning to end, and then we'd stop in sections and we'd hone it. So there was a lot more playing that actually made it on the record. Right. I just put in the stuff that that appealed to me, that I thought strengthened the song, that underlined the implications of all the stuff that I was already playing.
Yeah. See, sometimes you just ask the question and you never know, man. It's like, even when I was doing this podcast I did it for like 6 years, dude. For like consistently every week I would drop an episode. I would just hit up. You know how many messages like Mike Tyson has probably in his fucking mailbox or whatever? Like, I ask all kinds of people. You just never know. You know what I mean? I've spoken to so many people that I just never in a million years I would ever think that I would have a conversation with. It's like people ask me, how did you get that person? I just asked. All I did was ask. If they say no, okay, I understand. You don't want to do it. That's fine. I don't take it personal. That's it. You just keep it moving, man. So just asking. You never know, man. Just ask me, and there you go. Now you have all your piano on City Kids. It's fun.
Yeah. And I love it. And now almost every time I pick up the guitar to play something, I think about the implications of the piano.
Yeah.
But I have Dirk to come by every week for my lesson, and we just explore those kind of things. And he came out on the tour. We did a tour this summer, and Dirk came out and played piano. Well, that was another thing. I was like, would you want to come out on tour with us? And he goes, if it's possible. I said, yeah, it's possible. And he came out. It was great.
There you go. How cool is that?
It was very cool.
Yeah. And you see, you answered a question that I was going to ask you at some point. I was like, because everybody has the catalyst, that one little spark that turns you on to, I guess, quote unquote, heavy music, like when you were a kid or whatever. So I'm assuming by what you said, that was that Motorhead record.
Oh, no. I mean, I think I was listening to what I considered heavy music before I heard Ace. It was Ace of Spades.
Okay.
I was already listening to Aerosmith. Like, Aerosmith Rocks is a very, very heavy album.
Yeah.
And Aerosmith Toys in the Attic, I was already listening to that. And I'd already heard the Sex Pistols.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was a big head flexor for me, hearing the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
Because, in that era, like when I was in high school in the early 80s, the radio was turning into Blondie and the
Right.
Cars and all that kind of stuff. And heavy
Yeah.
music was just non-existent. It seemed like the last hold was Van Halen.
Gotcha.
And even Van Halen was kind of straying. Like the first Van Halen came out, Van Halen album came out in '77, and it was heavy.
Yeah.
But there was like one or two songs on side two, like Jamie's Crying.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Like,
Listen, here's my little hot take. I find that song to be very annoying. Whenever it comes on, I shut it off. I'm like, all right, enough with Jamie's Crying.
but that's the funny thing but your perception of Van Halen when they only had one album out was that they were a very heavy band, like
Right.
Running with the Devil and all that was Atomic Punk, and then there was James Crying.
Of course there was.
It was there.
It
But what we
was.
didn't know was when the second Van Halen came out, it was going to be more Jamie's Crying.
Uh-huh.
It
Of
was
course.
like, if anything, like you're like they could have gone Jamie's Crying, or they could have gone Running with the Devil, and they went Jamie's Crying.
Jamie's Crying. That's hilarious. Yeah.
So yeah, that even though the second Van Halen is still a little heavy,
It is.
it stayed a little bit heavy, but they definitely got Dance the Night Away and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
great stuff, but in that era, I was listening to Aerosmith and I still think Led Zeppelin's heavy. So
Sure. Absolutely they are. Yeah. It's like I grew up, my parents, my father had a huge vinyl collection. So there was music on in the background all the time. Like I grew up, I mean, I still listen to I'll listen to Joe Cocker and Queen and Pink Floyd and Zeppelin. And there was for some weird reason, there was a lot of Neil Diamond playing. And I don't know, whatever. But I don't hate Neil Diamond. I'm a Neil Diamond fan. And I won't, I don't, I'll admit that. I don't care. But I grew up with a lot of that stuff. And then in comes, because I'm 48, I was born in 75. So then in comes when I'm 10, 11, 12, that's when MTV is starting to get huge. I have a sister that's 6 years older than me. So, of course, I'm inundated with all the fucking hair metal and all of that shit from Bon Jovi and Poison and all this shit, which was just jammed down your throat. And then I found obviously early Metallica and stuff like that, and the early Testament records, and then of course the Suicidal Tendencies. And then I went to, and people that have listened to this podcast from the beginning know what I'm about to say, but my actual turning point, because I was like a metalhead, you know what I mean? I was a metalhead kid, and I went to L'Amour's to go see Suicidal. And it was on the Lights Camera Revolution tour. It was early night. What's that?
Great album.
Incredible record. I love Suicidal. Mike Muir is one of the greatest frontmen ever. Awesome. Just awesome. I never met that guy, but I would love to have a conversation with him. I tried once before, but there's way too many. There's red tape to get to that guy for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, but the lineup was White Zombie, Leeway, Suicidal. And White Zombie was unheard of still at that point. I mean, they were known in New York, but it was before Thunder Kiss and the Geffen record and all that, Beavis and Butthead and all that stuff.
And they were still doing Rush covers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they were doing God of Thunder, and they did all the stuff from Make Them Die Slowly and all that other early stuff. But then Leeway came on, and I have heard of them, but I never heard them. I seen them on flyers and whatever, and they came out and opened up with Rise and Fall. And I was remember the steps on the side of the stage at Old L'Amour's? If you're looking at the stage, they were on the left, kind of like stadium seats. I'm standing on the second one, and I had a bird's eye view pretty much of the entire crowd, and everyone the entire place just exploded when that song came on, and it snapped in my head. I'm like, what do we have here? And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And then Suicidal came on, and then a couple of days later, I went to, there's a place in Canarsie called Ciro's CD Cellar. And I went in there, and I bought Born to Expire. And at the same time, he's like, yo, if you like this, check this out. And he sold me Agnostic Front, Liberty and Justice, which are two that's Liberty and Justice is a crazy crossover metal record, I think. You know what I mean?
I don't know either of those records.
The third record, Agnostic Front, Liberty and Justice 4?
I've never owned an Agnostic Front record.
Really? I find that strange, really. And Born to Expire, the first Leeway. And I got those, and then it was off to the races. Then I went back. I got like the early Agnostic Front. That's when I found Age of Quarrel. And then it was on from there. So from like, even though I was born in 75, I'm not one of the kids that could say, oh, I was there when I was 12. I wasn't. I was like 16, 15 when I discovered it all. But
Mm.
but that Leeway show at that Leeway opening up for Suicidal was that little turning point where I kind of steered. I listen to everything still, but that's kind of what put me in that direction. It's my little catalyst.
And see, that's cool for you that you had local bands like that. I guess the bands that turned my head were, like I said, Aerosmith and Van Halen, and then Motorhead and Sex Pistols.
Right.
I think the first thing that I ever heard that I guess what you would call heavy metal was Unleashed in the East.
Made
The
it.
Judas Priest album.
Oh, Judas Priest. Okay.
You know, and a kid at school loaned it to me, and I remember thinking it just sounded like buzz saws when I first
Yes.
heard it. But slowly, I really took it on, and that album played a major role in how I wrote a lot of the songs on Age of Quarrel.
Huh.
Malfunction. I don't think there would be a song like called Malfunction if it wasn't for the song Green Mahalishi. Just
Really?
the way those guys played the guitars and the sound of the two guitars had a big impact on me. And you know, like I was saying, the thing about the thing about having local bands to be able to go to see. I guess when I was the same age when you were discovering bands, there were a few bands. There was the Stimulators, the Bad Brains, from Kraut,
Sure.
and a handful of others. Agnostic Front was one of those, maybe a little later. And but I had a hard, you know, I guess for you, when you made the discoveries of those bands, they made a big impact on you locally. You know,
Sure.
it took me a minute to recognize that these local bands that I was seeing, because you were also seeing them in a much bigger context. You were seeing them at Lemoore. You know, these big Lemoore is pretty big compared to the bands. You know, when I was going to see the Stimulators and the Bad Brains, it was like Max's Kansas City.
Yeah, I was never in Max's.
Max's was like a teeny little room.
Yeah.
It was smaller than Stevie's.
Yeah.
And you know, that was really my first experience, and then CBGB's. And I've told people this before, but I had a hard time like equating the bands that I was like standing in front of, really loving in that little teeny context, with the bands that I saw in the big places.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, and I don't, you know, it's hard to say looking back. You know, you were asking about Agnostic Front. You know, I don't know why Agnostic Front never didn't like resonate with me.
Really?
Me and Roger were great friends. We hung out all the time back then.
Yeah.
And I you know, I remember seeing them at CBGB's and everybody's singing along, you know, all the classic chanting.
Yeah.
Am I going insane? And just standing there in the audience, and
So good. It's so good.
I was like, this is really cool. Roger is like, what he's doing is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I just, again, I don't know why.
Yeah. Well,
Just like why I don't like Nine Inch Nails. I don't know why I don't like Nine Inch Nails.
me neither. I like two songs by them. I like two Nine Inch Nails songs.
Yeah, I listen to Tool, a band like Tool, and everything they're playing, like the bass is great, and the drums are great, and the guy sings great, and he's got cool lyrics. But if Tool disappeared from the planet tomorrow, I wouldn't even notice.
Me neither.
And I don't know why. Maybe someday, maybe it'll. And I always wondered that about Agnostic Front, and especially the fact that they've had such an enduring, you know, people just love them.
Yeah, man.
From the beginning, like the way they did back then to now, and
now,
Vinny Stigma's cult of personality is.
Oh, for sure.
I love how everybody posts about, you know, their picture with Vinny on his birthday.
Of course. Vinny's like everyone's uncle, it seems like. It's like you talk to Vinny, you feel like you knew the guy for his entire life. I don't know. He's the
reason why songs, you know, music resonates with you or doesn't, like, who knows why that happens. But,
yeah.
I just, you know, Judas Priest was the band back then that turned me in. I mean, Motorhead mostly, but
Sure.
Motorhead I didn't really think of as a metal band. I like when I was
We play
writing
rock and roll, as Lemmy says. We're rock and roll. We play rock and roll.
when I was writing all those early Cro-Mags songs. I remember I was just trying to write a Motorhead song. You know, I was like trying to write Ace of Spades. That's how that, and it just came out like World Peace.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's no rhyme or reason for that.
Right. Fuck. How about, you know what band I saw? I vaguely remember because it was so long ago, but I want to say my first thought would be I saw Psychic Orgy at Animal Hall. You guys ever play Animal Hall, or was it the Crazy Country Club? Early, dude.
I don't know the name of that place either.
The Crazy Country Club, their little tag. It was really like a comedy club, but they would have shows in there every once in a while. And their little tagline was called "Warm Beer, Lousy Food."
I don't remember that. I mean, I certainly played a bunch of gigs with them.
Yeah, yeah. It was one of those two places. And Animal Hall was
We definitely didn't play there.
run by the Rogue Animal Motorcycle Club.
Yeah, I would have remembered that.
Yeah, that place was crazy. I went. That's why I thought it was the same show, but I saw it was like Biohazard super early, New York City Strength, which was Anthony Mio, the original drummer for Biohazard's secondary band.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was maybe Psychic Orgy, a band called Red Skull. I don't know. It was some crazy fucking. It was kind of scary because when you go in there, it was like a big warehouse type deal. It was like a garage, and they would pull down the fucking roll down gate, and like you were trapped in there, and there's like dolls hanging from meat hooks and shit. It was something. It was fucking. Yeah. I think I still have the flyer somewhere. Life of Agony played super early, like one demo or something like that. I don't know. Anyway.
As Psychic Orgy, we played with Typo and Life of Agony. Some skateboard park.
Okay.
Agony and probably Biohazard too, which was a weird thing, you know. Like I don't understand why we were playing with any of those bands, but I just remember that this one. Oh, we played at Lemoore with Life of Agony and Typo Negative.
Okay.
The same day I shot the music video Onyx Slam.
With Drew, right? With Drew was there.
Drew was the producer.
Yeah.
And, I remember we were shooting the video all day long. And we'd been shooting all day the day before. And the video was going later than I thought it was going to go. And I had to play it Lemoore.
Oh, shit.
Night. So, like, we're shooting this Onyx video. Like, we have, like, 500 kids diving all over the place in this warehouse and Onyx. And we're shooting this great video. And Run DMC was there. And it was just like a whole scene.
And I could only imagine what that scene was like.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I had my shot list, and it was getting towards the end of the day, and I felt like I'd shot everything I wanted, except for like the stuff of Big DS smashing the windows. Like we had all these windows on frames, like hung on chains, and he was like smashing.
Yeah.
And we were like setting up that shot. And I knew it was gonna take another 2 hours to shoot all these window breaking things, but it would just be the same kind of thing. That's like long lens stuff with like the window spinning in slow motion and smashing, just like it was.
Right.
And I just turned through and I was like, I gotta go. And he was like, "What? Are you crazy?" And I was like, "I gotta go. I gotta go play this show."
Yeah.
And so I turned to our director of photography. His name is Greg Smith, who shot all our videos. And I said, "You got the shot list. You know what I want to do. I gotta go." And and I think Drew might have even driven me to Lemoore. I can't remember. I know I went in a crew van, and we were in Queens, and I had to drive all the way to Lemoore, which seemed to take forever. And I just remember showing up to Lemoore and jumping up on stage and playing that gig.
Nice. Yeah, you directed a bunch of videos, man. I mean, some people might or might not know. I mean, from you did We Gotta Know, didn't you?
Yeah, that was the first one I did.
Yeah, We Gotta Know, and then of course Punishment, which is an amazing video. Shades of Grey is also fucking an awesome video with the train cars and shit. What a great video.
I almost like Shades of Grey better than Punishment.
I think I do too. Shades of Grey is an awesome video. Tales from the Hard Side, After Forever, Typo Negative, Black Number One. I mean, they're all like, I mean, I'll say it, they're all like iconic videos. I mean, they're all classics. You know, and you said it's funny, you were like, I'm not even sure why I was playing with like Typo and Biohazard and Life of Agony. There was a moment in time in Brooklyn where it's almost like Biohazard, Typo, and Life of Agony were all pretty much one and the same for some weird reason. They would all play. I remember having to choose shows. It's like, okay, so-and-so is playing L'Amour's, this one's playing the Continental, this one's playing at the Limelight, like, and have to choose. And it was like those three bands all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably know this already, but Pete came up with the name Biohazard, right?
Yes. Yes.
Evan, I met Evan at a carnivore show. We were both had our elbows on the stage, like next to each other and looking at each other. We became friends because of that. And yeah, he told me about how he asked Pete. He was like, "Hey, we need a band name, and you're good with that kind of thing."
He definitely was.
He went off and I guess went to a hospital or something and grabbed the Biohazard waste bag and brought it back and handed it to Evan. Was like, "This is your name.
That's it."
And he was like, "Yeah, that was awesome."
Yeah, it's a great name for a band. It's Biohazard. It's great. Yeah, it was at L'Amour's. Speaking of L'Amour's, we got over from this L'Amour's thing, but it was May of '91. It was the last Thrash Bash. It was the Cro-Mags reunion and all that stuff. But Typo played, and that's the night that Pete announced that they were no longer called Sub-Zero. No, they were no longer Repulsion. Now we're Typo Negative. He's like, yeah, it's like the band name of the month or whatever. And he says it on the stage. And from that point on, he announced it to the crowd that we're now Typo Negative. And the rest is history since May of '91. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that I was there to catch that little moment in time, I guess.
There were so many great Typo Negative shows back then, like playing at the Lismore Lounge. Or remember there was this little underground teeny club on Avenue A where there must have been like 15 people watching.
Best shows. Those are the best shows.
And of course, those guys just played. They were used to that from Carnivore.
Sure.
It's like if they played at Lemoore, it was packed and sold out.
Yeah.
If they played anywhere else, it was empty. It was the weirdest thing. Like you had to cross a river into Manhattan, and they would play in an empty room.
Yeah. It's like YCB is like a quarter of the way full in its Carnivore, but like the weekend before, there was 1,500 people shoulder to shoulder at L'Amour's.
But I mean, I love them, and I always pressed Chris Williamson, our manager, to get them to open up for us, like at the Ritz and stuff like that. And I think that played a big role in getting them a little bit more exposure in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And I used to love going. I'd take the train out to Brooklyn. To watch Carnivore rehearse in Josh's house.
Yeah.
Josh Silver, they used to rehearse in Josh Silver's basement. And in this little teeny room in Josh's basement. And they would mic the drums. in this teeny room, like smaller than, about the size of this room, they would play. And the drums are in the corner, and there was like a PA speaker in the corner. And the drums were mic'd, and they were so fucking loud.
Awesome.
And the entire room was shaking so much that I was sure that the house was going to collapse.
Right.
It was so. The SBT just shaking the wall, and it was amazing. I loved every second of it. That period of time where we were all friends running around, talking about the future and listening to what we were doing as we were doing it. It was just such a wonderful time.
Doing what city kids do.
Doing what city kids do. That's right.
100%. So now I want to piggyback off of you doing all these videos and stuff. And I see, well, you mentioned Law and Order a little while ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is that my fucking stupid ass phone?
Law and Order, organized crime.
Organized crime. Something that I'm very fascinated with. But I see you posting a lot because I'm a big horror fan and I'm a big Walking Dead fan, and I think it's fucking awesome that you're on Dead City, man. Now, I heard that Jeffrey D. Morgan is an absolutely sweetheart of a guy in real life. I've heard that. You've posted that as well. Um, I actually went up to Rhinebeck, New York, and I went to go visit his candy store that he owns up there. It's called Sam's Sweet Shop. I had to go there just because it's Negan's candy store, and how weird and cool is that? So I'll take a ride 2 hours away just to go to this little small shop because why not? It's a nice day. You know what I mean? I don't care. But yeah, but I've been watching the show and whatnot, and you probably see what I also do. I this whole it's like my exploration team thing that I do. It's actually Danny Boy from House of Pain created the whole thing, and it's a whole long story. But basically, what a whole bunch of us do, I happen to be one of the New York guys, is whatever you're into, whether it's horror movies, organized crime, like true crime stuff. It could be a famous athlete on the street somewhere, whatever it could be, and you actually find the actual location, and you go there yourself physically, and you'll take like the screenshot from a movie or whatever, and I'll take the pictures at the right angle, and I'll throw it into Photoshop and kind of overlay the screenshot onto the photo that I took. And I did. It was I think the second day after the premiere of Dead City, I was like, oh, I know where that is. I know where that is. I know where that is. All downtown Manhattan and stuff like that. So I got like 4 or 5 shots, which are within like 2 corners of each other. So every time you post shit, I'm like, where is that? Like, I want to know exactly where it is so I can get that shot. So maybe you can let me know, like on a private message or something, like where this was shot, so I can go there when I'm bored and take pictures for my quote unquote photography club. Yeah. So
We did spend about 3 days shooting in Manhattan.
yeah.
Most of it we shot in New Jersey.
Yes. I know that there's
Like
screenshots that I have, but I'm not sure where they are. There's like, isn't there like Newark Penn Station? There was shit shot maybe, and
Well, the thing about on-set pictures is like we just don't do that. It's just not something we do.
Right.
Those pictures that I ended up posting at the end of the season, Jeffrey took those pictures.
Okay.
So he's not going to get in trouble for taking pictures.
Right.
So he took a bunch of pictures on set and just sent them to me. And I was like, and he's a producer of the show. So I was like, can I post these? And he was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. He seems like a fucking cool ass dude, man. Like that's somebody I would like to shake his hand. I wouldn't even want to break his chops, like just shake his hand. Yo, what's up, man? Like, pleasure to meet you, and then walk away. Not even, you know what I mean? Like, that's just cool. Because what a great character he is. He was such an asshole on the show, and then the way it was written, the next thing you know, he's like the ultimate baby face, and he's such a good guy. Brilliant. It's brilliant.
He is a great guy. It was great working on that show. Yeah. I don't know if I'll do season 2, but I speak to Jeffrey often, and he is what he calls an unabashed Aggros fan.
Okay, that's fucking awesome.
It is, and he's a rock fan.
Yeah.
He went saw Metallica here in New York, and he's into it. It wasn't like a stretch for him, but when I first found out that I got the job on Dead City, I wasn't sure which spinoff it was. It wasn't even called Dead City. It was called Isle of the Dead.
Right.
And apparently they weren't allowed to use Isle of the Dead, like, or of the Dead. Like everything that is blank of the dead is already copywritten by
probably like Romero or
something like that. So when I found out that there was going to be a number of spinoffs, I thought, oh, I wonder if it's going to be the one that Norman Reedus is in. Norman Reedus is an old pal of mine. We used to, run around the city doing what city kids do.
Oh, really? I didn't know that either.
And so I texted him. I was like, hey, are you on the show Isle of the Dead? And he goes, no, I'm on a different show. I'm in Paris, France.
Yeah.
Shooting my show. He goes, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the star of that one. And I said, oh, that's cool. He goes, and he's a good friend of mine. So, you definitely, you'll have a good time. And I was like, okay, cool. So I walk on the set, and first time on set, it's like everybody's just kind of like getting to know people, but it's always business as usual, business immediately. Like
Yeah.
You know, as soon as we're in, we start talking about the shots, everything, you know, it's like all pleasantries go out. And the director's standing there, and all the actors are standing around, the director's talking, and then Jeffrey Dean Morgan looks at me and he goes, "Hey, are you Parris?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "You're Norman's friend, right?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He goes, "Any friend of Norman is a friend of mine." And
Awesome.
everybody's like just standing there like waiting for him to finish.
Yeah.
And then he comes up and he shakes my hand. He's like patting me on the back. We're talking about Norman for like, I'd say 2 minutes, which is a long time when everybody's just standing around.
Yeah, yeah, man.
And it was pretty much that way for the entire season. It was just like great time.
Awesome. That's good shit, man.
I mean, besides the fact that I was working on a great show, you know, I worked on a lot of TV shows, and it just becomes a grind, you know, just like any other job. You end up doing stuff that's, you know, it's cool, and you're getting paid well, and you're making TV, and that's all fun. But a lot of it's not as fun as others.
Sure.
I will definitely remember working on this season of Dead City for a long time as my favorite job that I've ever done.
That's great, man. So you don't know if you're going to be on season 2 when you're going to find out. I know you want to be.
You know, I've been talking with Jeffrey about it since we wrapped the first season, and one of there are all kinds of different things to take into consideration, and one is, you know, where the show will be shot.
True.
And I think they've established where it's going to be shot, and and they don't know if it's going to be shot in New York. If it's going to be shot in New York, I'll work on it. But if it's not going to be shot in New York, I'll probably
New York or New Jersey.
Well, New Jersey is basically the same thing, but
Yeah.
I might not even be there. It could be anywhere.
True.
It could be anywhere where the tax incentive leads them, or the talent is close at home, by at home. I mean, I know Jeffrey lives in New York, but there are other people to consider, like Lauren. So I don't know what the logistics of it are, but I'd love to return. And if I don't, I'll just go on to another show.
Yeah, there you go. Fucking awesome. So what's in store for the Aggros? What do you have? Because I know you're a busy guy, and I know you're always creating, or at least thinking about music and whatnot. So what are you doing with the Aggros? What's next for the Aggros?
There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm working on getting the band to tour Europe to continue to promote this album, Rise of the Aggros. Which I'm very happy.
The artwork?
We have it on vinyl and CD, and
the artwork is done by.
On the cover is done by Andrew Montserrat.
Okay.
And he's a New Yorker, although he lives down south now. And I saw him. He actually posted not this piece of artwork, but something very similar to it.
Okay.
Posted on Facebook, so I just wrote him. I was like, "Hey man, what is that? Like, are you like a graphic artist or something?" And he goes, "Oh, it's just something I drew for my son, and it's hanging in his dorm." And I said, "You're kidding?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Why?" I was like, "I don't know. I need, you know, my music is very New York themed, and I wanted something on the cover, or something, you know, some kind of artwork to basically, you know, because I feel like I've branded the Aggros with my music videos,
right?
You know, which is basically the nights of my memory, you know, of the way New York used to look. And when I saw this, it just struck me. I just loved the way it looked. I thought, you know, I could use it for something. I didn't know what I would use it for. And he said, "Oh, I'll just make a new one for you." And he sat down and he drew it. And then, like, I guess about a month later, I got a poster tube in the mail. And the original artwork was in the mail. He just sent it to me.
Wow.
And
how cool is that?
And it's about this big, and it's triangular. So I just squished it down to a square.
Okay.
Put it on the cover, and, you know, put the logo on there.
Yeah.
And then on the back, this is drawn by a London artist named Andrew Sawyers. He draws like Judge Dredd and stuff like that. Comic book artist. Same kind of thing. I saw his artwork on Facebook, and we began chatting about it. I said, he goes, "You know, I'd love to draw something for you." And I said, "Okay, do something." And he did this, and that became the back cover. And then this was drawn by Sean Taggart, who I sat with in homeroom at the High School of Art and Design when I was a teenager.
Oh, really? I had him on early on the podcast. I had you on.
Yeah. And like, he did all the Cro-Mags flyers back in the day.
Yeah.
actually went on to become an artist of note, doing album covers for Agnostic Front and
Yep. Cause for Alarm, Get Loud, Prong.
Carnivore.
Yeah.
So having him do some artwork for me was really, really great because I hadn't really, we kind of like lost touch. I hadn't spoken to him in decades.
Yeah.
And then I reconnected with him just to ask him to do this, and I couldn't ask for more. So yeah, so I'm gonna be promoting the record.
Okay.
Take it to Europe, promote it there. You know, I will eventually go back on a new TV show, and that'll stall things for a minute. But you know, I'm not on a record company schedule. You know, I plan to do things like if I get a TV show,
Yeah.
and it's a 6-month run, I will book a tour for the week after that TV show ends, and I'll tour for you know a good block of time, and I'll keep recording. That's the way I've been doing. I don't record like in one big bulk. I just go in whenever I have something. Like I'll even go in if I have a drummer that I know that I can do one of my songs with quickly. I'll go in or I'll record basic tracks, and then I'll just hang on to it until I have more time to finish that recording, and I'll just keep recording like that.
Nice.
And make stuff one at a time. It's like, you know, like I said, you know, I don't have to jump when a record company says to deliver goods. I just make it when I want to, when I feel like I've got something that I'm proud of that I want to share.
Yeah, you're free to do whatever the hell you want, man. That's awesome.
That's right.
Yeah, man. So where can everybody find the Aggros? All your social medias and all that stuff.
Well, there's a website, www. I always say www at the beginning of this because people, when they hear .nyc, they don't realize it's a website.
Right.
But aggros.nyc. That's that's where our store is for the United States. You can get everything Aggros there, or you can go to Bandcamp. I have a Bandcamp page, which is Bandcamp Aggros. Yeah. And if you're in Europe and you want vinyl, you can order it on Bandcamp, and I have people in Europe who will ship you the record there. And you can also get it digitally on Bandcamp, and you can get all merch and vinyl and stuff in the United States on Bandcamp too. But I prefer to get it from our website.
Yeah.
And I'm on Facebook, Parris Mayhew, and I'm on Instagram, Parris Mayhew and Aggros.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just promoting it in a very grassroots way. Like I've always said, I'd rather stand on the street corner and sell my records one at a time.
Yeah.
And actually have somebody to show for it than have somebody else sell it for me and not even being in control of it anymore.
Right.
Being in control of it is more important to me.
It's understandable. I completely
controlling the quality, controlling what I put out, when I put it out, and how it looks. You know, like even this record, like the inner sleeve. Like the inner sleeve is full color and it's like almost the same stock as the cup. Yeah. And a lot of times you buy a record, you pull it out, it's just got like this white inner sleeve. Yeah. It doesn't. But this has got like awesome double full color inner sleeve, colored vinyl, like spared no expense.
Right. Yeah, but that shit is cool,
I want it to be like, you know, I want anybody who enjoys music enough to buy a physical product to enjoy it as much as I did
as a kid.
Holding a Rush album,
or
a Prince album, or a Van Halen album. It should be exactly as nice as those. And so I spent the money to make that happen.
I get it. That was like a ritual back in the day. Before there was streaming and all that, I would save my allowance and I would get my little job. And yeah, it was like the first. Yeah, I've told this story before too, but like I would if I was to ask my mother, like, Ma, I need like a certain amount of money because I was a huge Anthrax fan way back in the day, and Ciro at his little store had a fistful of metal picture disc, and I was like, oh man, so I got a job. In order to make money, I told him to hold it, and I got a job to buy that record. And it was just like, we seeked it out. And then once we get these records, we go home and you take off the cellophane, you're reading the lyrics along with it. Like that was like nowadays that shit does not happen anymore. You know what I mean? The internet and all that, we seeked out everything, looking at thank you lists and oh well this, and there would always be like the bands that, you know, whatever band toured with. So you're looking at that, like, okay, well, and then you see, all right, well, early Metallica record, you see Cliff Burton with a Misfits shirt on. Oh, who the hell the Misfits? Then you find the Misfits, and then, you know, so that's how it was. And so that's why it's awesome that you took the time to recreate that kind of a feeling in somebody who would appreciate that, you know, in your record.
Well, I mean, I also did it because there's this obvious resurgence of vinyl.
Yeah, sure.
So it wasn't like I knew I was making it for nobody. I knew I was making it for people who wanted it. But I ended up doing that kind of thing. Like there's a big thank you list in there. I have a lot of people thank. So many people who lent their talent to making this record, like like Mark Mastalone, who owns the recording studio where I did the finishing of the whole album in South Brooklyn. You know, just an incredibly generous guy. You know, like I wouldn't have been able to make the record the way I did, and exactly the way I wanted it if it wasn't for him. So I owe him eternal gratitude. He's the first person I thank.
Nice.
There are, you know, people that I thanked, you know, because gratitude doesn't have a shelf life, or it shouldn't.
Right.
And I have a extensive thank you list of people who've helped me over the years, doing many, you know, help guide me along through many creative endeavors, like Leor Cohen, who was the Def Jam guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I directed many music videos for him. He gave me a record deal. You know, he supported me as an artist in many ways, and you know that was a long time ago, but it doesn't change my gratitude. Howie Abrams,
yeah,
you know, how he gave me some of my first opportunities as a director.
Yeah,
you know, the guy with Anthrax. You know,
yeah. Always big shout out to Howie Abrams. I mean,
yeah, I was a great guy. He's still a great guy.
Yeah,
he was a great guy back then. He was a generous person who found himself in a position where he could elevate people, and he made the decision to do it, and he gambled on it, and that was pretty brave back then. So I always appreciate it. And
yeah.
so I think a lot of people like that, Andrew Montserrat and Andrew Sawyers and Sean Taggart, who did the art.
Yeah.
And the guys who I played with, all the drummers, Cobbs, who was the main guy, the main drummer, and Chuck Lanahan, of course.
Nice. Awesome.
And there's so many people that I feel gratitude towards who didn't make the list, but
yeah,
you know, I try to stick with people that were directly related to elevating me as an artist.
Nice. That's very fucking cool, man. Very cool. Well, this was fun. No?
Absolutely.
You didn't cut me off. You didn't like, all right, I'm done. That's fucking funny. Yeah, it was something we were talking about before we pressed record, but that's pretty funny. But yeah, man, listen, I wish you nothing but the best, man. And obviously we'll stay in touch. I have to skill your flyer. So I'm going to be creeping around your Facebook page and finding a good big shot of you, or if you have a particular photo that you want me to use as the center, the focal point of your flyer, feel free to send it, or else then I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Do what you want to do. It, yeah.
All right, very cool. Yeah, it'll be cool. I'll hook it up nice. So yeah, well, actually, I had a bunch of sponsors, so I only have one sponsor who came back once this Blast Furnace resurgence, I guess you want to call it. And it is Generation Records at 210 Thompson Street down in the West Village. Follow them on Instagram at Generation Records, and I mean, it's Generation Records. They've been there since forever, and Mark's a good dude, and he always supported what I do, and so shout out to them, and I appreciate them jumping back on board. And maybe next episode or something, other people will jump on. Very cool. Whatever happens.
And you can get this at Generations.
Yes, you absolutely can. So go to Generation Records and buy a physical copy of the Aggros vinyl, CD, whatever. Do they have your shirts there downstairs or no?
No, just the record and the CD.
All right, so www.aggros.nyc and go grab your shirts. Very cool. Parris, my man, I appreciate you. And anything else for any other closing arguments?
No, just thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it when you asked me.
Yeah.
I was happy to join you and chew the fat.
Yeah, chew the fat. I'm glad. I appreciate the actual short notice that I hit you up earlier today. I mean, coming off of COVID and stuff like that. I mean, I know you don't feel 100%, but I appreciate your time, especially because you're not 100%. But you seem like 100%. You did great, kid.
Thanks.
All right. Be good, brother.
You too. Thank
I'll
you.
talk to you soon. Anytime.